Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. It could be one of those because this is a global retail event. I am James Cook. I'm the head of retail research for JLL, and we are here for our special global event with Giuseppe Stigliano, co-author of the new book, Redefining Retail, 10 Guiding Principles for the Post-Digital World. And it's, of course, available for sale at all of your favorite booksellers. So go ahead and grab it now. Open up Amazon on another screen. Go ahead. I'm sure Giuseppe would appreciate that. So this is a very special event. It's not just a global LinkedIn Live event, but it is also a recording of the Where We Buy podcast. So all of you are special guests on the Where We Buy show. And if you want to hear your question asked on the podcast, we'll be getting to all of your questions in a little bit. So go ahead and type a question when it comes into your mind into the chat for Giuseppe, and we will get to it in the open question part of our event. So the format of today's event is pretty simple. It's going to be 3 guests in conversation with one special guest, that's Giuseppe, but we've got an international panel today. So our first panelist is joining me from the United States, a different part than me. I'm in Indiana, and my first guest is Naveen Jaggi. Naveen, you're joining from Houston, Texas.
That's correct. Thank you, James. Glad to be here.
Excellent. Now, Naveen, you're president of Retail Advisory Services for US at JLL, and you're going to bring the American perspective to today's conversation. So you're ready to go?
Looking forward to it.
Okay. Well, before we get into it, as folks know, Giuseppe's book is about disruption. When retailers and brands don't change with the times, they risk becoming irrelevant. So the question is, how do they avoid it? So from your point of view, retailers that you're looking at in North America, are you seeing anything that they're doing differently to maintain their relevance?
Well, retailers need to be watching the news, watching the trends, watching what the consumers are doing. And I think for the most part, your bread and butter retailers in America have done a pretty good job of following the trends. Legacy retailers have struggled more than others. But James, I can't help but bring up the most obvious example of a retailer that was once the pariah of the retail industry and today is a shining star, which is Abercrombie. Look at the shift in that brand. And what did they do? They paid attention to what the consumer was thinking. They paid attention to what the consumer thought about them. And they pivoted 180 degrees. And they went from being the most hated retailer in America back in 2017 to one of those admired retailers today. So if you pay attention to your consumer, what they want, you can survive and you can swing back. So I think today more than ever, you have to listen to what the consumer is saying, not just do you think your brand is relevant.
Yeah, that's a great example. My wife and I were at the mall recently, and it was the busiest store in that wing of the mall. And my wife is like, "What is going on there?" I'm like, "Oh, that's Abercrombie."
That's right. They're back.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so we've got our American perspective. Let's bring in our European perspective. So our next guest is Barbara Cominelli. Welcome, Barbara.
Hi, good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening.
Well, it's morning for me. It's probably afternoon for you. So Barbara is CEO
Omni,
of.
omni good. Not omni. All salutation for everybody. Whatever.
Okay, yes, whatever it is, welcome. Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
Barbara, you're CEO of JLL in Italy, and you also oversee EMEA retail. So you're bringing that perspective to today's conversation. And you're based, am I right? You're based in Milan, right?
Yes,
Excellent. What's the weather like in Milan today?
it's fantastic. We are starting the summer just right now because the weather was awful till yesterday, and now we are at 30 degrees. So
That sounds
good.
wonderful. We're having a heat wave here in the US, so it was nice until a few days ago. And now it's just miserably hot. But so let's talk about retail. So in redefining retail, one of the arguments is that successful brands can't be 100% digital and they can't be 100% physical. I think that's what it says. Well, ask Giuseppe for sure, but they have to have that right mix. So my question for you is, in Europe, do you think brands in general are successful of having the mix between digital and physical?
Yes, I think that the landscape is evolving, no? As the brands are striving to find the optimal blend between the physical and digital presence. And I don't want to spoil the conversation that we're going to have later with Giuseppe, but I really think that what he calls in his book opti-channel, so optimal mix of channels, with your own custom mix of physical and digital is what is happening. So, and many European retailers are making moves in this direction, and they consider now to upgrade the customer journey, considering basically three main drivers. Now, the personalization to reflect the customer target, profile, preference. Second, the brand differentiation strategy and positioning. And third, also the component of the margin, because this is, of course, the part of the equation that didn't work for some full online 100% retailers. So we're really seeing a mix. Mixed strategies are the more common. So in the past years, most retailers have invested in omnichannel, so online platforms to include better user experience, faster shopping options, more robust return policies, click and collect, very widespread. But at the same time, increased investment also in the in-store experience. Now that remains in most cases, as we know, where the client experiences fully the word and the philosophy of the brand, and where he can touch, he can feel the product. So mixed strategy. In some cases more headed towards physical, and this is the case of high-end luxury brands that they are really striving to emphasize the exclusive in-store experience. And here we're really seeing much more attention on the quality of the location, much more attention on the quality of the fit out, and actually the physical sales in Europe are forecasted to grow at between 3 and 5% in the next few years, which is really a structural uplift in physical sales. No, we haven't seen it since the last decade. So the physical location remains super important. We have also example like the German luxury brand, the New Yorker, that has more than 1,000 stores in 47 countries, where and is quite successful. And you can look up the product online, but you can only buy offline because they want to drive clients to the store. Primark, as we know, in Europe is struggling to go big with online, no? As it dilutes, as we were mentioned before, the profit. So mixed strategies with, again, the pure online player trying to open some brick and mortars, trying to experiment like Shein or ASOS with some pop-ups, but at the moment not really quite successful, also because I mean, the big picture, putting together the margin consideration probably is not yet well defined.
Got it. Understood. And you know, in Italy, you all were doing retail before, you know, Europeans were even in America, you know. So you've got not decades, hundreds and hundreds of years of experience, more experience than us. So that was fantastic. That was a great overview, Barbara. So let's bring in our main guest today, Giuseppe Stigliano. Did I get that right, Giuseppe? Your last name?
What a great pronunciation! I'm not used to it. Thanks for that. Thanks for
I'll give you a little.
me, by the way.
I'll give you a little behind the scenes. Barbara helped me out a little bit.
Okay, so you've been practicing. Okay, got it.
So I'm going to throw this cover up on the screen again, just so folks remember. You're co-author with Philip Kotler of Redefining Retail, 10 Guiding Principles for a Post-Digital World. You've written a number of books, Retail 4.0, On Life Fashion, and you're also an adjunct professor and we're at business schools, international universities, and you're also CEO of your own company, Spring Studios. So you're bringing a lot to the table here. You're a multifaceted fellow.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great being here with you and having the opportunity to share our perspective with you. And I'm sure this will be a great conversation. We all bring different perspectives, different angles to the story. So I'll look forward to it.
Yeah, fantastic. I just finished reading Redefining Retail. I've been taking notes. Also, I should mention I subscribe to your newsletter. It's called Giuseppe's Glimpse. And maybe what I'll do in a minute is put a link to that in the chat if folks want to subscribe to your newsletter. It's very well written, I should say. Not every newsletter is.
Well, I have a great co-author called ChatGPT, which has me polishing and refining no, not the content. And the content is there, hopefully, but when it comes to the look and feel, the shape, the tone of voice, I get some help. And I think
love it.
We should all be straightforward. It's a great co-pilot. It's a great assistant. It's a great. In some cases, it's also a great coach. And I think we should just be very open and try to get the most out of the tool, right?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So let's talk. I'm putting the link in the chat for folks that want to subscribe. Did that pop up? We'll have to double check, make sure that went into the right chat room. Anyway, so let's talk about Redefining Retail. What's the purpose of the book? What did you want to achieve with it?
Yeah. So, well, the idea behind is that this, after COVID, considering the Gen AI revolution, considering what happened in the last few years, it was the right time to write a book about redefining retail, or if you want, redefining the rules of the game. And for a number of reasons, I guess the subtitle where we mention the post-digital world or the post-digital era is the essence of this idea of redefining retail. So basically what we have realized, and we've had conversations with 165 CEOs all over the world, different industries, different sectors, what we have realized is that there was an opportunity to distill some guiding principles based on those conversations. And at the same time, even though there was not a common name to define this new phase, there was a general understanding and a general agreement that we were entering a new phase. We always say, when I say new, it doesn't mean that we are forgetting the past or that the future doesn't happen in a vacuum. But it's true that the future is no longer linear, right? It's no longer a marginal optimization of the past. So on the one hand, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. On the other hand, it is hard to predict because the evolution is no longer linear. So we have realized that there was an opportunity to describe this new phase, and we have decided to call it post-digital. The idea is that there are at least three main trends, if you want, three main components, three main traits. First one, it's no longer the time where brands or companies or consultants should, in our opinion, talk about this idea of digitalize or die. This is more a maturity phase where this notion, digitalize or die, leads the way to this more mature approach where full digitalization might not be the right path for every business. As Barbara was saying before, in some cases, it is definitely a good idea. In other cases, it would probably dilute the value proposition. It is not aligned with the digital alphabetization of my audience, or perhaps I simply don't have all the resources in terms of people, in terms of money, in terms of time to allocate to a complete digital transformation of my company. So whether it's, let's say, intrinsic internal causes, or it's based, you're embracing this customer-centric approach and you simply realize that your customers are not ready, are not willing, are not interested in this full omni-channel approach, whether or not you are in a position to do it, it is the time now to be very mature and to decide whether or not you want to open digital channels, whether or not you want to experiment with virtual channels, and so on. So first point is stop talking about digitalize or die. Let's focus on this maturity stage where we optimize the channel mix based on internal factors, again, resources, people, talent, and external factors, including the digital alphabetization of my audience. Number two if on the one hand, it's true that it's no longer, at least, about digitalize or die, this doesn't mean that we can just embrace or adopt a head in the sand approach. We cannot just pretend that this digital revolution transformation didn't happen, and we cannot just pretend that the Gen AI, robotics, 3D printing, and VR, AR, and all these general purpose technologies are not simultaneously changing the way we work and the way people behave and the way customers buy and so on. So we describe this as an exponential gap. In other words, yes, of course, it's not about digitalize or die, but you need to figure out what is your own peculiar channel mix. Otherwise, you just get disrupted for good. Catching up with those who are moving now in the next few years will be very, very hard for a reason. The third factor, this convergence, simultaneous convergence of a number of general purpose technologies, they will absolutely change the landscape for good. So once again, the future is no longer a marginal optimization of the past for at least 3 reasons that I have described, and we call this phase the post-digital era.
All right. So we're in the post-digital era. Is that what you mean when you say retail 5.0?
Correct.
Is that the same thing? Okay.
Correct.
And it sounds to me, and I think you said this in the book too, that this transformation, whatever it is, whatever's right for your company, it's not really, at the end of the day, it's not really a technology problem. It's really a people problem, right?
Yeah,
Is that
absolutely.
fair? Yeah.
Yeah, there is a big difference between change and transformation. We tend to use the two words interchangeably, but it's not the case. Change is situational, transformation is cultural. So when we talk about the transformation, which is the case, it's mainly about people. People are by nature risk averse. This is the way our brains developed over the last few thousands of years, millennia. So the idea is, if we are risk averse, if we tend to like the comfort zone because it's a more efficient way for our brain to work, if we like the idea of developing our own experience, building on our experience, being promoted based on our experience, on our past success, it's very hard to acknowledge and to accept that what got us here won't get us there. It's very hard. We can sort of understand it, but it's very hard to accept it and to act accordingly. So that's why it's cultural. That's why it's about people. That's why it's about embracing a new paradigm, a new way of doing things. And if you think about it, it's very counterintuitive. Also, in relationship with the way we have been trained as managers and as human beings, if you want, the previous generations. The story was all about you build your experience, you build your foundations, and then you will build your success, layer after layer, brick after brick in the future. Today, it's no longer about deep foundations and buildings. It's about building a tent and being nomad for the rest of your life. You need to build and rebuild. That's why I like to call it a Lego bricks mentality, where instead of building with deep foundations, we should build with the Lego bricks so that we change at least the color, if not the shape, and the purpose of the building itself every few years, or in some cases every few months.
So in that metaphor, then you're saying the company changes itself every few months, or they
That's a great
change?
question. That's a great question. No, the short answer is no. Companies need time to change, to adapt, to transform, let alone transform. But it's true that customer expectations evolve faster than companies are innovating. And if it's true that there is this exponential gap, if it's true that this world is changing at the speed of an algorithm, we need to figure out a way to be, this is something we described, it's one of the guiding principles we described in the book, we should find a way to be ambidextrous, meaning that you keep doing what you're doing, you keep operating the way you are operating, because again, companies need time to change, let alone transform. But at the same time, you need to figure out agile ways to experiment in a number of directions, to partner with startups in some cases, to partner with other companies, with your suppliers, with your business partners, in some cases, even with your competitors. We call it co-petition, or cooperate with frenemies, friends and enemies at the same time, because in some cases, you just need to figure out a way to push the bar of expectations, to promote or to lobby with the government for whatever reason. It's just a very complex scenario, but it's true that we cannot expect, especially from established companies and big players, that they can change overnight.
Interesting. Giuseppe, you mentioned earlier our friend GPT, and how is it going to impact the customer journey? Are we all going to have a personal shopper enabled by AI that knows us so well, that can help us shopping, that can help us?
Well,
How do you envision the impact of AI on the customer journey?
I do believe that there will be a huge impact. I do believe that there is no reason why we shouldn't embrace and get the most out of such a transformative technology. I also believe that it is the first time in human history in which we have the opportunity, with all the sort of risks and the externalities, the negative externalities, to embrace a technology that, for the first time in human history, is able to create. This is big. This is new. In the past, we've been using technology to amplify, to distribute, or to store human ideas, human creations, content, created by human beings. In this case, we have a non-human agent able to create, competing with us on something that has been making humans unique since the dawn of civilization. So we need to figure out what this means. Now, to answer your question, I think we've been talking a lot about B2B and B2C. I think in our previous book, we made a point that there was a process of B2Cization, in which even B2B players had to develop the skills of B2C players, because they could go direct to consumer, bypassing retailers. And second, because the bar of expectations of human beings was becoming so high that even in the B2B area, players needed to develop different muscles, right? Then somebody said, my co-author wrote a book about human to human, making the point that it's no longer about the business like an entity, but it's made of human beings interacting with each other. Fair enough. What I believe is that we're now entering a phase in which we will start talking about B2AI, for the precise reason that you have described. So if I tell my assistant, please buy some milk, who decides the brand? Who decides the type of milk? Who decides the whatever? So the milk producer, the milk company, needs to do what I call B2AI, needs to develop different muscles, different skills to market that specific product to an AI. So it's no longer about a nice packaging, nice lettering, nice brand name, a nice whatever advertising and marketing campaign to get the attention and to appeal human beings. You need to figure out how to market the product to an AI. I'm not saying this is going to be mainstream and this is going to be true for every single product, in every single market, in every single category, but surely it is going to happen in more mature economies for commodities in the next, I would say, 12 months. Again, not mainstream overnight, but progressively. B2AI is, I believe, the next phase. Then the following one is probably AI to AI, where basically the assistant will learn from you, and instead of asking you or you asking the assistant, please buy some milk, the assistant will probably place an order online in the morning just because you have instructed the assistant or it has learned autonomously that you tend to have milk in your fridge every day unless you're leaving. So the assistant would probably check your diary, realize that you're not going anywhere for the weekend, realize that you don't have milk, knowing that you typically have milk, and placing an order. At that point, that it's no longer about B2 AI, because it's an AI probably interacting with another chatbot, another AI, another robot, another intelligence, whatever we want to call it, to place an order. And probably there will be also dynamic pricing, and the two entities will negotiate the right price for the milk. And that is a brand new era. Now, again, this is futuristic. This is a bit dystopic. I'm not saying that this is going to be mainstream in the next 6 months, but this is the direction, at least in more mature economies and markets, at least for some categories. And we marketers should figure out ways to at least have an opinion and be ready to act.
I really, it resonates a lot what you're saying, no? Because we always say that we used to say that technology is a tool, it's just an enabler, no? So a knife, you can use it to cut the vegetables for dinner or to kill someone, no? And but here I think it's more difficult than that, because the knife doesn't decide if he wants to kill the people or cut the carrot. So here it's we have a tool that is definitely more powerful. And so as a brand, I mean, of course there are ethical considerations and so on, but as a brand, you really need to decide what you want to keep human and what you want to make relevant for the human component, and what you want to delegate, no, to algorithms and deep learning.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
I wonder if in the future there'll be a big backlash. And you know how you go in the supermarket and you have the organic label on produce? There's a new human only label on, say, books, or movies, or this was, no AI was involved in the creation of this book. Like, do you think, Giuseppe, that in the future there will be kind of a big backlash against all of this?
I wouldn't call it a backlash. I would call it just something between nostalgia and authenticity, human authenticity. But yeah, I do believe that there will be room for that. Absolutely, yes. Room for irrationality, room for imperfection, room for serendipity. I just believe that, and building on what Barbara was saying, I just believe we have now, at this generation, we have the responsibility to build the framework within which we want, as human species, we want this technology to operate. And I'm talking about, of course, ethical consideration and so on. And at the same time, for companies and organizations in general, we need to figure out what is the right balance on this continuum between full automation and full human, knowing that there will be room for all the nuances in the middle, right? In the book, we say technology is cool, but people are warm. Now, if you decide to double down on technology, it is absolutely okay. You can have a store like a restaurant with a robot flipping burgers, a robot serving clients, and a robot cleaning the table. It's absolutely a fair value, perfectly acceptable value proposition. And at the opposite of the spectrum, you can have a full nostalgic restaurant with human beings making mistakes with orders and changing the whatever, and pouring Coca-Cola on your table just because they stumble upon, what I mean? It's just, and with all the nuances in the middle. What is not acceptable is keep doing things the same old way, pretending that we can just simply ignore this revolution. One thing is consciously decide that you want to be fully human, and knowing that you will face a different competition, that you will be inefficient, that you will need to figure out what is the right price point and business plan for your organization, considering that you will fight with way more efficient competitors. If you manage to build your value proposition in a way that attracts nostalgic consumers and that delivers this idea of authenticity or human whatever, then you have a future. Otherwise, I'm not sure.
Very fascinating. So for folks out there, we're just a reminder, we're talking about redefining retail. If you have questions for our author, now is the time to put them in the chat, and I'll ask questions as they pop in, if they're appropriate, of course. So this book is about 10 guiding principles. So far, we've been just talking about this so much. We're deep into it, but I think we've only named one principle so far. Naveen, maybe I'll ask you to pick our net. We should talk about another principle. Do you have the list in front of you? Oh, if you don't, no worries.
I don't. But
okay, no worries. What should we talk about? Let's talk about. Oh, I know what one we want to talk about is. Where is Opti-channel a principle? No, that's not a principle, is it? That's just a concept.
Well,
let's
yeah,
talk
I mean,
about
it's
that,
it's described. It's described. It's not a principle, but basically the idea is we talked the last, I would say, 10 years were all about omnichannel and this idea of phygital, right? So physical and digital touch points. What we argue in the book is that the customer journey is no longer bidimensional, so physical and digital, but it's now three-dimensional. We have the virtual world as well. And I'm not talking about the metaverse of all the things. I'm talking about my son asking me, my 8-year-old son asking me to buy a BMW for his birthday. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, it's just $9 and it's for my avatar on Fortnite. And it turns out that Moncler has a store there and Ralph Lauren has a store there and so on. And in the future, we'll have probably, I don't know, the Jean-Louis Davids of the world, opening hair salons so that avatars can go there and change their hairstyle. And first, he wanted to buy this with my money, like real money, for his avatar. Second, 70% of kids this generation declares that they would happily buy for themselves the same things that they buy for their avatars. So this is real, right? This is real. This is happening. And if you are a brand and you are building an emotional connection with a prospective customer in the shape of an avatar in a virtual world, even before that prospective customer had the opportunity to interact with you in the digital world and in the physical world, so everything is starting virtual, we need to acknowledge that the customer journey is now three-dimensional, and the number of touch points, which was already big to the point that omnichannel was hard to achieve when it was phygital, if it's now three-dimensional, the number of touch points is such, and there is such a huge fragmentation that we believe omnichannel is simply impossible for most of the brands out there. So instead of trying to be everywhere, considering this fragmentation and the number of touch points, we should try to focus on our business case, focus on our budget, focus on our resources, focus on our KPIs and objectives, short-term, medium-term, long-term. And at that point, we should double down on what we call opti-channel, or the optimal mix, the optimization of the channels that you need to choose among that huge variety of options. That's more or less the idea. And we covered this in a guiding principle called Be On Life. So the idea of on life is that it's no longer about online, offline, virtual. It's just that our life is happening at the same time without, in a seamless way, everywhere at the same time.
So Giuseppe, let me take a stab at a question that's not on the list, but it kind of moves into this area. Just 2 years ago, there was a lot of conversations around the metaverse. The future of shopping was going to be the metaverse. And in 2 short years, we moved from the metaverse to AI and how that's changing the way consumers shop. And I'll give you an example towards my question. So my son-in-law was at my house the other day, and he walked me through how he used ChatGPT to not only put together his shopping list to make dinner that evening, but then we went a step further and we asked ChatGPT, where would we find all these products in the simplest journey inside the grocery store? So we said, we want to go to H-E-B, which is a big grocer in Texas. And where could we find all these recipes to make our trip the most efficient trip? And it told you go to aisle 6, left side, third shelf. This is where you find all these things. And so in many ways, we've blended the metaverse with AI, right? Now we have a We have a machine that's telling you how to make your shopping more efficient. Yet at the same time, Giuseppe, we know that most US consumers and European consumers are very price conscious. And so they're buying value retail is a big driver for the way they shop. How do retailers attract both the value shopper and make it affordable for them, and yet invest in all this technology, which costs a lot of money, right? And how do you blend the two to make it most efficient for the consumer as well as make it margin profitable for the retailer?
Thanks, Nevin. I think this is the mother of all questions. I give you a parallel sort of discussion that I have recently had with the CEO of a fashion house. He told me, if another person, another consultant, another professor comes and tells me that I need to focus on sustainability, I kill them. I operate in the second most polluting industry in the world. Of course, I know that I need to figure out what is my business case when it comes to sustainability. Problem is, to go to your point, problem is, how do I map my fragmented supply chain, considering the number of suppliers, sub-suppliers, and the different countries, because we've built this in a world that was all about globalization and delocalization and fragmentation, and let's make sure we leverage the asymmetry and we build something or produce something or manufacture something in places where the labor cost is lower, and so on and so forth, right? So if I were to apply blockchain, to name technology, to map and monitor every single step of the supply chain, and yes, I would turn this company into a sustainable machine, but probably I will get fired before I complete the process, because I will kill the P&L of the company for the next few months at least. I will distribute zero bonuses to my team, because there will be no money to distribute, because I will be, all the money will be allocated on such an ambitious project. So either I get fired or I get, killed. I'm joking, of course, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean. So I think one of the main problems today is precisely that it's very clear what we, as market business community, what we should do, but it's very hard to act according to the vision. And I argue that this is exactly what happened in the past with the usual suspects, right? With the Blockbusters, with the Nokias, with the Blackberries. I don't believe that they didn't realize the direction. I don't believe that they didn't get where the next wave would bring the market or the competitive landscape. I don't believe that they didn't realize that there were emerging, nimble competitors ready to fight and to eat their lunch. I do believe that in some cases, even though what is the right thing to do, especially if you're running a big established organization, you cannot just take the money from something and put the money somewhere else. You cannot just fire 50% of your workforce and hire new people with different skills and turn around the company. It's simply not possible, and it would be too risky. Imagine if every time that there is a new technology, company were to fire everyone and hire new people and shut down factories. It just doesn't happen. So I think this is the mother of all questions. And that's why I go back to what I said before in terms of ambidexterity. This concept, which we didn't coin, we just borrowed this concept. But this idea of being ambidextrous is precisely a way to answer to this point, because it's not reasonable to ask an established player to double down on something, invest all the money they have, and so on and so forth. What is reasonable is, for example, and I've worked with a retailer in this direction, you build an innovation team, you do a call for ideas, you cooperate with a number of startups, and you ask them to develop small solutions to build pilot projects. And once you have an MVP, a minimum viable product, you test it in one store, then you scale it in 3 stores. And at that point, you can reasonably build a business case and scale it. But at that point, I'm simplifying, it's not that easy, but it's a viable option for established players, way more than pretending that you can, A, just keep doing things as in the old days, B, realistically change and turn around the company overnight, because this is not going to happen. So building something small, working in this open innovation idea, with startups, with innovation centers, with whatever supplier partner. And the world is full of emerging Netflixes for the established blockbusters. It's just about having the maturity to be vulnerable enough to admit that today you are the established giant, but you need help. You need to work with players who understand your industry, or at least the evolution of your industry, better than you. It's hard. It takes a lot of vulnerability to admit it, but if you do it and you start small, you scale it, and then you build a business case, I believe there is an opportunity.
That's being humble, I guess.
Absolutely, yes. And by the way, one of the guiding principles is be ambitious, which is this portmanteau of humility and ambition, which is, I believe, the right mindset, the right mental posture in a world where you need to be humble enough to admit, as you said, that we don't have all the answers and that we need to question our certainties and our strategies. At the same time, we don't have to be overwhelmed by the number of options and the number of things, the competitive landscape and the players, and they are smaller and they are more efficient, and ChatGPT is disrupting everything. The risk of being overwhelmed just because we don't get it is very high. So this blend of humility and ambition, we believe, is the right mental posture for the.
I like it. Ambitious. Go ahead, James.
Yeah.
Giuseppe, one of the other principles. Oh, sorry, James, go ahead.
No, you go.
Now, one of the other principle is be a destination. So we are seeing really strong interest and strong demand for the best locations, because especially from high-end brands, but not only. So really, if you want, it's an inception point. I mean, it's a moment where things are changing. You all surely read about Kering and all the luxury brand buying the location to secure the space in the luxury areas. So this is just one piece of the story, but what does it mean to be a destination in the digital 5.0? We know about the experience, the high tech and high touch. How does it look like if you have to envision a new destination?
Well, when it comes to technology, I agree with you that Gen AI is a tool, and I agree on what you've said before in terms of knife doesn't decide what to do. But I wouldn't say that we've used technology in the past just as a tool, because it's true. But I think this is a way to minimize humans' intervention, humans' ideas behind that. The evolution of technology is based on our desire to do something in a different way, to simplify our life. We built emails because we thought letters were not efficient. So we've been working hard to develop a solution to simplify our lives. And if you think about calculators or computers, we build machines so that we could delegate, if you want, boring tasks and focus on value-added tasks and activities. So I think this is another evolution in that direction. At the same time, I believe that in the book we write, technology is like a joke. If you have to explain it, then it's not that good, right? So it should be invisible, which is another guiding principle, be invisible. Every time that we implement a new technology, it should be invisible for both the people who need to use it. So let's say your employees, when you update the whatever operating system, and your customers. So yes, of course, you can ask your customers to download yet another app, or to use a specific tool, or to go to your website, or to leave their personal data. However, this can only be acceptable if you give real value in exchange for that, right? So if they perceive that that is not an invasion of their privacy, of their time, of their energy, and that you're not doing this just because you need something, or because this is technology for the sake of technology, or because you didn't take the time to make it simpler, right? So when it comes to being a destination, in the past, destination used to equal physical stores, right? So the idea was, If my store is a have-to-go place instead of a wants-to-go place, it is not a destination. Destinations are want-to-go places. So I have never heard someone saying, I want to buy milk today. We tend to say, I have to buy milk, right? Because it's a commodity, because most of us don't attach any emotions to that specific activity or that specific customer journey. However, we tend to say, I want to go to, I don't know, shopping for, I don't know, fashion. Suit, exactly.
Or go to the cinema. Yeah.
Oh, exactly. That is an experience. That is something that, and this was quite straightforward in the past. If it's a destination, it's an experience that we want to experience. If it's functional, it's something that it's not about the destination. It's not about being a destination. It's about functional benefits. Fair enough. What we argue in the book is that due to the fragmentation of touch points that I have described before in this three-dimensional customer journey, this is not that simple anymore. First, a destination or a want-to-go place can be physical, digital, or virtual. And in terms of the way people, it's a time allocation, a resource allocation. If my son is playing Fortnite and buying an expensive car and familiarizing with a brand, he is there. It means that he is not somewhere else. He's not dealing with another brand, neither in the physical world nor in the digital world. He is dealing with a brand, specific brand, in a gamified environment, in a virtual world. That's it. He's not doing something else. So there is an opportunity cost. There is a trade-off, if you want. If he's doing something, he's not doing something else. And so in this fragmented ecosystem, a destination can be virtual, physical, and digital. It can be a want-to-go place. You can create this aspirational, this desire to go and spend time in a specific touch point. Who cares if it's physical, digital, or virtual? And when it comes to an experience, what is an experience today? It can be a virtual experience, a digital experience, and a physical experience. And even when it comes to a physical store, we should stop saying, yeah, no, of course, digital and virtual are about efficiency and the brick and mortar store is about experience. It's not true anymore. You can have super immersive experiences in the virtual and digital worlds, first. Second, if I go to the store to buy milk, I don't want an experience. I want efficiency. So stop saying that brick and mortar stores are all about experiences, because what I want is to get in and out in 3 minutes. And if I can avoid interacting with human beings, it's even better. It's just efficiency, right? So it's just more complicated. And that's why we need to redefine the rules. But we also need to redefine the concept of retail itself, if you want, right? So what is retail in a world where you can buy a BMW for your avatar? What is retail in a world where you can be a manufacturer and decide to bypass all intermediaries and become a retailer? What is retail in a world where if you're a blogger and if you have a community, you can just launch a brand and start? I'm simplifying, but I'm describing real world case studies, right? You can build out of your community, you can create your brand, and then you can have stores, and then you can scale it. What is retail in a world where the B2C, which used to be a retail, right? The C of the B2C, the customer, can just go online and sell a vintage leather jacket to another customer. That is called C2C. And these guys are competing with retailers because, once again, the buyer of that product is not going to a store to buying the same product. So these guys, customers, used to be the last piece, let's say, of the value chain, the supply chain, sorry. They are now becoming competitors of retailers as much as manufacturers, as much as bloggers, as much as whoever has access to an audience. And we all have access to an audience, if you think about it. We are broadcasters today. We have followers, we have fans, we're friends, we have people who are currently watching this discussion, and perhaps they will fall in love with Barbara's jacket or with your hat, and they will probably use Google Lens to take a picture, find it online, and buy it. You are retailers competing with formal players in the market, because if they buy it online because they saw it on your head right now and they found it easily, maybe with the help of ChatGPT in the future, they're not going to a store.
It's
They're
the
not
power of
ordering.
social media, right? I'm Giuseppe. That's what we're talking about. Instagram makes everybody a fashion brand unto themselves.
Correct.
So we're quickly running out of time, but I do want a percentage of the sale if anybody buys the hat. And Barbara wants
Royalties.
a percentage of the jacket sale, right?
Of course.
But so we're running out of time. I need to ask you what's on my mind, and we kind of touched on it, but I want to go a little bit deeper, and that's about bricks and mortar, because our business is primarily, physical retail stores. I feel like physical retail is more important than ever. I feel like if you're a digital brand now, you're like, oh, well, I have to have a physical store, at least a few of them. Do you think that changes? Do you think that the importance of the physical store is going to go away in this retail 5.0?
I think there is no room anymore for those who try to be everything for everyone. So I see a lot of polarization in the future. I think that we go back to the idea of destinations. I think that brick and mortar stores should provide people with a very good reason to go there and take the time to go there. Can be efficiency. It's easier to buy milk there unless there is a quick commerce player that can bring you the milk in a few seconds. But in most of the cases, it's not the case. So in that case, the service that they provide can be all about efficiency. In other cases, the service they provide, it's all about an immersive experience and an amazing ritual. For example, when you buy a suit or when you buy a dress or a bag, and the ritual and the experience. And in that case, probably technology can play a role behind the scenes, right? Maybe there is a sensor telling people that specific client is approaching the store, and quickly recapping the key information about that customer, and perhaps Gen AI suggesting the right way to approach and interact. But then tech is cool, yes, but people are warm. So I always make this example. If I am on a plane and in business class, they tend to come and welcome you calling your name. Of course, they don't recall you or your name, right? They check it on an iPad. But one thing is approaching you with a piece of paper and with glasses here, like, hi, Mrs. Stigliano, how are you today? Welcome back. And one thing is reading my name, maybe practicing a couple of times as you did it before, hiding the iPad and say, hi, Mrs. Stigliano, how are you today? Welcome back, right? It's a completely different experience. This is just a little example, but imagine a metro welcoming clients and say, hi, last time you had a great Chardonnay. Can I recommend you this, whatever Pinot Noir consider that you want red, because I believe this is a great way for you to evolve and to continue your journey. And it's a great pairing with the food you've ordered. And in some cases, they will know it. In other cases, they will leverage technology and warm it with the human touch. So this is about the experience in the physical space. If we successfully embrace this transformation, figure out the role of technology to empower, augment our ability, humans' ability to deliver a warm, emotional, empathetic customer experience, then yes, they will have a role. And I do believe, and I agree with you, that the more the world becomes dominated by technology, whether it's Gen AI, robotics, 3D printing, AI, AR, VR, and so on, the more these chemistry-based human beings will need situations and moments where they can interact with fellow human beings in a, let's call it, traditional way. So I do believe there is a lot of there are a lot of opportunities for brick and mortar stores if they don't pretend that nothing is happening.
Got it. Change with the times. Well, speaking of times, we're just about out of it, but I just let you know the reviews are in and they're positive. Fantastic dialogue from Scott. Review from Francesco as well. So people are definitely engaged. And I want to remind everybody out there, I put a link in the chat to subscribe to Giuseppe's newsletter. And it's not weekly, right? It's is it once or twice a month? Fortnightly, which is something we don't really say in the US. Fortnightly, which means what?
That's every
my 2
London.
weeks?
Yeah, every 2 weeks. Sorry about that. Twice a
No,
month.
you're fine. This is a global audience. I need to learn my lingo.
I'm sure in Europe they got it. In Europe they got it, but it's twice a month.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if folks want to see more videos like this, they can go to our website, everythingweknow.show, and that will send you over to YouTube, where you can watch the replay of this as well. That'll be up there. And an audio version of today's conversation is going to be on the Where We Buy podcast, which you can find at wherewebuy.show. And we have tons more amazing interviews with folks as fascinating as Giuseppe. So thank you so much for joining me today. And I think we're going to call it a show. So with that, everybody have a great day.
Thank you, Giuseppe.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.